At age 65, Yul Brynner revealed the names of the Hollywood gay actors he secretly dated, and it wasn't a pretty story. Yul Brynner, the icon with the shiny bald head, exotic appearance, strong demeanor, and romantic secrets that stirred up the entire film capital for a long time. Imagine, in an era when homosexuality was considered taboo, harshly condemned by society, and covered up by Hollywood studios to protect the star's images, Yul Brynner bravely lived true to himself. But those secret romances brought so much pain, with unpleasant consequences that affected his family, career, and even his legacy. We will explore deeply his journey, from a boy migrating amid war to an Oscar-winning star, the lesser-known stories, details about his same-sex relationships, from where they met, the level of intimacy, to the emotional aftermath. First, let's go back in time to Yul Brynner's early years, a period full of turmoil that few know all the details about, where the seeds of eccentricity and bisexual instincts began to sprout. Born on July 11, 1920, in Vladivostok, a remote port city in the former Soviet Union, now Russia, Yul Brynner had the real name Yuli Borisovich Brynner. He carried diverse mixed blood. His grandfather was Swiss-German. His father was Russian with Buryat-Mongolian origins, an ethnic minority in Siberia with nomadic and warrior traditions. And his mother was pure Russian from an intellectual family. His family was quite wealthy. His father was a mining engineer and also an inventor, but life was far from peaceful on the surface. At that time, Russia was in the Bolshevik Revolution of 1917. The civil war between the Reds and Whites lasted until 1923, and Vladivostok was chaotic with interventions from Allied forces like Japan and the United States. His father, Boris Brynner, was an adventurous man who had studied abroad in Switzerland, but he soon abandoned the family to follow a young, beautiful actress, leaving Yul and his mother in pain and financial instability, living in a large house but full of loneliness. His mother, Marusia Dmitrievna Blagovidova, a strong woman who had studied medicine but had to give it up to care for her children, decided to migrate to China in 1927, when Yul was only 7 years old, hoping to find a better future among the Russian refugee community in Harbin, a vibrant industrial city with Russian opera houses and music clubs. Here, in Harbin, Yul began to exposure to the world of art, especially music. He learned to play guitar from exiled Russian street artists, sang sad Russian folk songs about distant homelands, and dreamed of grand stages, often sneaking out to watch classic Russian plays like those of Chekhov. But life continued to challenge. In 1933, when China faced the risk of conflict with Japan, the Japanese army invaded Manchuria, creating political tension. His mother and he had to leave again, this time to Paris, the city of lights in Europe, where the exiled Russian community gathered in Montparnasse cafes. In Paris, Yul truly stepped into the enchanting and chaotic bohemian world, where he began to explore his own sexuality. He performed in late-night cabarets like Le Boeuf sur le Toit, where cigarette smoke filled the air, jazz music echoed from America, and he even joined the Cirque de Hiver circus troupe, performing acrobatics on high trapeze under glittering neon lights. But a terrible accident happened in 1937 when he was only 17. He fell from a height during a performance, breaking many bones in his legs and back, and had to lie bedridden for nearly a year in Saint-Antoine Hospital, where he endured intense pain and loneliness. To alleviate the agony, Yul became addicted to opium and other stimulants, an emotional wound he carried for life, affecting his later health, leading to heavy smoking habits. It was during this dark period at a discreet opium den in the Pigalle area, where artists gathered to find inspiration and forgetfulness, that he met Jean Cocteau, the famous French poet, artist, and director who became Yul's first same-sex lover. They met through a mutual friend in the Bohemian circle, when Cocteau was seeking inspiration for the film La Belle et la Bête. Their relationship was very intimate. Cocteau, 31 years older than Yul, was not only a lover but also a mentor, introducing him to the Paris intellectual elite, where he befriended Pablo Picasso, the great Cubist painter at his studio on Rue des Grands Augustins, and Salvador Dalí, the surrealist master with bizarre paintings at the Meurice Hotel. They often spent time at Cocteau's apartment in Palais Royal, discussing art late into the night, sharing poetic love letters and short trips to the French Riviera. The romance lasted a few years, intimate both physically and emotionally, but also full of drama due to Yul's addiction and Cocteau's artistic temperament, leading to a breakup when Yul had to enter rehab. These relationships nourished Yul's imagination, helping him learn about art, but also deepened his inner loneliness, because he had to hide his same-sex romance in the conservative French society of the time, where homosexuality was seen as a sickness. Dear viewers, imagine a young man, far from home, addicted, and discovering same-sex love in the chaotic period before World War II. It wasn't a romantic story like in the French love films you've seen, but a real tragedy, where love became a temporary escape from physical and emotional pain. His mother had cancer, and they had to return to China to seek help from his father. But his father already had a new family, making Yul even more resentful. I would like to pause a bit to analyze this period more deeply, because it is the foundation for Yul Brynner's entire life, especially how he handled same-sex relationships later. From my perspective, as someone who has studied film history for many years, this childhood and migration phase shaped his eccentric, mysterious personality. He learned to hide his past with fabricated stories, like claiming he was born in the wild Siberia with white snow, his father a descendant of Mongolian royalty with legendary battles, or his mother a Romani nomad with glittering gold rings and ancient curses. Those lies were not just to create an exotic image for his later career, but also an emotional shield, covering the pain of being abandoned by his father, his mother's illness, and his own trauma from the accident. In that society, especially for older viewers who have lived through world wars and social discrimination in America in the 1940s, 1950s, living true to oneself was a luxury, even dangerous under anti-homosexuality laws. Yul chose to embrace mystery, but that also isolated him, leading to prolonged inner conflicts, where same-sex love became an important but secret part of his life. And now, let's move to the next chapter, his early career and first secret romances, where gay secrets began to emerge, but were still carefully hidden, with details about the meetings and levels of intimacy. When World War II broke out in 1939, Europe plunged into flames. Yul and his mother returned to China to seek help from his father, but he met Katerina Kornikova, his father's old lover, now his stepmother. She was a talented actress who had studied with Michael Chekhov, the Russian acting master, who later taught Marilyn Monroe and Clint Eastwood the Stanislavski method, emphasizing inner emotions. Katerina taught Yul professional acting skills, a deep, resonant voice, strong gestures like a warrior, free improvisation like a street artist, and captivating body language with circus moves. Thanks to that, in the late 1940s, Yul left Europe with a letter of recommendation from Chekhov, heading to America, the promised land of Hollywood, where thousands of refugee artists flocked after the war, from New York with vibrant Broadway to Los Angeles with glamorous MGM studios. He arrived at the right time, when New York and Los Angeles were exploding with post-war Broadway and films, with the baby boom and economic recovery. In New York, Yul started with singing jobs in nightclubs like the Copacabana Club, where saxophone sounds echoed and artists gathered. And in 1941, he met Marlene Dietrich, the legendary German actress, twice his age but still mesmerizingly seductive with her husky voice. They began a passionate romance, lasting 10 years, with long nights in luxury hotels like the Waldorf Astoria, where Dietrich taught him makeup and posing in front of mirrors. Marlene, once a bisexual icon in 1920s Berlin, taught him showbiz secrets, how to create light scandals to attract gossip papers, how to negotiate contracts with studio bosses like Louis B., Mayer of MGM or Darryl F. Zanuck of 20th Century Fox, and how to maintain a mysterious image by avoiding deep interviews. But at the same time, Yul also further explored his bisexuality, with same-sex romances carefully hidden. He had a same-sex affair with Hurd Hatfield, the handsome actor famous for the lead role in The Picture of Dorian Gray in 1945, the film based on Oscar Wilde's novel, where Hatfield played a beautiful but morally corrupt young man. They met at a post-Broadway performance party at Sardi's restaurant in 1941, when both were studying acting with Chekhov. The intimate relationship lasted a few years, with secret meetings at Hatfield's apartment in Greenwich Village, New York's Bohemian area, where they discussed Wilde's novels and shared fears of discrimination. They were quite close emotionally. Hatfield helped Yul overcome remaining addictions from Paris, but the romance ended when Hatfield focused on his career, leaving Yul with regret over a love that couldn't be public. Yul's nude photos from 1942, taken by gay photographer George Platt Lynes, a famous artist with male nude artworks at his Manhattan studio, still circulate online today, a bold evidence of his freedom, but also a great risk if exposed under the Hays Code banning homosexuality. And here is the sensational part you've been waiting for, the part that makes our video title so appealing. Yul Brynner revealed, indirectly, the names of Hollywood gay actors he secretly dated through his son Rock Brynner's biography published in 1989, titled Yul, the Man Who Would Be King, and rumors from biographer Michelangelo Capua in the book Yul Brynner, a biography, in 2006, as well as interviews with old friends. First was Jean Cocteau, as I detailed. The romance in Paris with poetic love letters and nights at Palais Royal, intimate to the point Cocteau considered Yul his muse for his plays. Then Hurd Hatfield, the affair in 1941 when both studied acting with Chekhov, close to the point they shared personal secrets about childhood. But that's not all. He also had an affair with Paul Newman, the blue-eyed charmer of Cat on a Hot Tin Roof in 1958 and The Hustler in 1961, a masculine icon but rumored bisexual. They met at a Hollywood party hosted by Joanne Woodward, Newman's wife, in 1958 in Beverly Hills, when Yul was filming The Brothers Karamazov. The intimate relationship lasted a few years, with secret meetings at Newman's ranch in Connecticut, where they discussed method acting and shared wine. Emotionally close because both had difficult childhoods. However, this affair wasn't pretty because it caused tension in Newman's marriage, though Joanne knew and accepted it. Marlon Brando, the rebellious icon in A Streetcar Named Desire in 1951 and The Godfather in 1972, who later openly admitted bisexuality, had intimate moments with Yul in the 1960s, while filming Morituri in 1965 at sea off California. They first met on the film set in San Diego, where Brando was famous for his erratic temper. The romance was short but passionate, with nights at the Del Coronado Hotel discussing politics and civil rights, intimate to the point Brando once called Yul his soulmate, but ended due to ego conflicts. Even Manuel Puig, the Argentine writer famous for Kiss of the Spider-Woman in 1976, an openly gay man, had a brief affair with Yul in 1960 in Paris, when Puig was writing a play script. They met at a cafe in Saint-Germain-des-Prés through an introduction from old Cocteau, a short intimacy with conversations about Latin American literature and cinema. But Puig later recounted in his memoirs that Yul was the mysterious man who moved me. These romances weren't pretty, dear viewers. They were hidden because Hollywood at the time viewed homosexuality as sinful, which could destroy careers under the pressure of Joseph McCarthy and the witch hunts for communists cum homosexuals in the 1950s. Yul used his exotico image, the mysterious Eastern man with tan skin and sharp eyes, as camouflage, but the consequences were painful. Infidelity destroyed marriages, broke families, left children lacking love, and Yul himself lived in torment. From my perspective, this is a tragedy of the era, where true love was distorted by society, leading to pain for everyone involved, like in the noir films you once loved, where the protagonist always pays for their secrets, with shadowy scenes and falling rain. Now, let's talk about Yul's marriages and family, the part that adds emotional depth to the story, because this is where the secret same-sex romances had the most direct impact, causing long-lasting wounds. He married 4 times, but most ended in tears due to infidelity, neglect, and eccentric personality, with same-sex affairs like with Newman or Brando as the foundation for conflicts. His first wife was Virginia Gilmore, a beautiful Broadway and noir film actress like in Western Union in 1941. They married in 1944 when Yul first arrived in America, and had son Yul Brynner in 1946. At first, the romance was like a dream. Virginia helped Yul learn English through evenings in their small New York apartment. They strolled Manhattan hand in hand, but affairs with Marlene Dietrich and Hurd Hatfield made Virginia suffer, leading to divorce in 1960 after 16 years of tearful living. Virginia once said in an interview with Photoplay magazine that Yul was a wonderful husband when at home, cooking Russian food for the family, but he was rarely home, always busy with showbiz and secret lovers, making her feel betrayed. Rock, their son, grew up without a father, later became a historian and wrote his father's biography, revealing many secrets with both sadness and admiration. His second wife was Doris Kleiner, a beautiful French aristocrat, Chilean model of Jewish origin who worked for Dior. They married in 1960, right after the first divorce, had daughter Victoria in 1962. Doris brought a luxurious lifestyle, a villa in Normandy, France with rose gardens, parties with high society like Grace Kelly. But conflicts arose due to Yul's eccentricity. He demanded his wife follow a strict military-like schedule, and affairs with Ingrid Bergman, Joan Crawford, heterosexual lovers, and Paul Newman. Divorced in 1965, Doris kept the daughter and moved to Chile. Yul had little contact, making Victoria grow up feeling abandoned. Later, she recounted in interviews that her father was a charming stranger. Additionally, Yul had daughter Lark in 1958 with Frankie Tilden, a short-term lover who was a dancer, but he acknowledged the child and provided financial support through a trust fund. His third wife was Jacqueline Thion de la Chaume, or Jacqueline de Croisset, a French aristocratic journalist who wrote for Vogue, married in 1971. They adopted 2 Vietnamese girls, Mia in 1974 and Melody in 1975, in the context of the end of the Vietnam War, showing Yul's compassion as he visited orphanages in Saigon. Jacqueline supported Yul a lot, accompanying him on charity trips to the Middle East. But same-sex affairs with Brando and Puig continued, combined with his erratic temper, like demanding a private helicopter on film sets to avoid fans, leading to divorce in 1981 after fierce arguments. Nevertheless, Jacqueline maintained a good relationship for the children's sake, and the adopted daughters grew up seeing Yul as their real father. Mia later became a designer. Melody did charity work. Finally, his fourth wife was Kathy Lee, a young dancer in the Broadway production of The King and I. They married in 1983 when Yul was 62 and seriously ill. Kathy, 38 years younger with Asian origins, stayed by his side until the end, supporting his fight against lung cancer with trips to Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital in New York, sleepless nights reading books to him. This late romance brought some warmth, but also full of regrets due to the short time. Kathy later recounted that Yul regretted his same-sex affairs, but considered them part of himself. Dear viewers, Yul's marriages reflect deep inner conflicts. He craved a stable family to compensate for his chaotic childhood of being abandoned by his father. But his bisexual instincts and fame made him unable to stop at one person, with same-sex romances like with Cocteau or Newman as catalysts for breakdowns. In my eyes, wives like Virginia or Doris were the biggest victims. They loved Yul sincerely, sacrificed their careers for family, but society at the time blamed women for divorces, while men like Yul used power and money to hide affairs. This wasn't pretty, but a lesson on the consequences of secrets, on how social discrimination pushed people into vicious cycles of suffering, especially when hidden same-sex affairs led to jealousy and suspicion. I deeply empathize with you, because many in our generation have witnessed or experienced similar broken marriages, in an era when divorce was still heavily stigmatized as sin. Next, let's talk about Yul's peak career, where he became the true king of Hollywood, with films that you surely have seen and loved, where his eccentric image hid the romantic secrets. In 1951, he starred in the Broadway play The King and I, based on Margaret Landon's novel Anna and the King of Siam, shaving his head bald to fit the role of the strong, arrogant but learning from the West Siamese king. The show was a resounding success, running over 1,246 performances at St. James Theatre. He won the Tony for Best Actor, and the 1956 film version by 20th Century Fox brought him the Oscar for Best Actor at the 29th Academy Awards. Alongside Deborah Kerr, the elegant English actress with Victorian hoop skirts, Yul shone with his semi-nude, barefoot appearance, combining Paris circus experience and Chekhov method learned from Katharina, singing Shall We Dance with a deep bass voice. The film was not only a commercial hit, grossing over $21 million at the time, but also carried messages about East-West cultures, about arrogance and learning, which you, in the post-war era, probably felt deeply with the Cold War and cultural conflicts. 1956 was also a golden year. He played Pharaoh Ramses II in Cecil B. DeMille's The Ten Commandments, alongside Charlton Heston, the legendary Moses. With epic scenes filmed in simulated Egypt at Paramount Ranch, budget $13 million, using 14,000 extras. Yul worked out frantically at Gold's Gym to not be overshadowed by Heston's physique, and this role solidified his image as the powerful Eastern man, with the line, "So let it be written, so let it be done," becoming classic. The same year, he starred in Anastasia with Ingrid Bergman, the lost Russian princess, where he had a real affair with Bergman, but complex about his 5'7" height. Bergman was 5'9", so he refused platform shoes, joking on set, "I won't stand on a box, I'll just make you look taller." The film won an Oscar for Bergman, and Yul became an A-list star, earning $1 million per film. In the 1960s, Yul diversified. The Magnificent Seven in 1960 as Chris Adams, the cowboy leader, alongside Steve McQueen, James Coburn, filmed in Mexico with dust and scorching sun. They had fierce conflicts on set. Yul built a mound to appear taller than McQueen, 5'8" versus 5'10". McQueen kicked it down, and both tried to steal scenes by smoking or adjusting hats. But the film succeeded. Remade from Akira Kurosawa's Seven Samurai, grossing $2.25 million, starting the spaghetti western series by Sergio Leone. Yul also starred in Taras Bulba in 1962, based on Gogol, filmed in Argentina with wild horses. Kings of the Sun in 1963 with Ancient Maya, and Morituri in 1965 with Brando, where their rumored femme-sex affair began on the ship set. He was the inspiration for Professor Charles Xavier in X-Men, according to Stan Lee in a 1970 interview, due to his strong, bald look and deep intellect. In 1969, he played a drag queen uncredited in The Madwoman of Chaillot alongside Katharine Hepburn, and films like Westworld in 1973, The Robot Gunslinger at the Delos Park Simulation, pioneering sci-fi with dangerous AI themes. His eccentricity stood out. He hated taking photos with other bald people for fear of losing his exclusive Brynner look, demanded private helicopters when filming with Brando to fly home every night, and was obsessed with appearance from his addicted youth, always looking in mirrors and eating breakfast in silk kimonos. He was also a talented photographer, Shooting for Life magazine about refugees, and a musician with gypsy folk albums like The Gypsy and I in 1967, playing guitar at parties. Yul was an icon breaking Hollywood masculine norms in your era. Men had to be strong like John Wayne or Gary Cooper with slicked hair. He embraced strangeness, inspiring later generations to live true, but not without cost. Eccentricity hid bisexuality, leading to loneliness and conflicts with colleagues like McQueen, who once called him an egomaniac. In the 1970s, Yul changed profoundly, became UNHCR ambassador for the United Nations in 1971, helping Vietnamese refugees after the war, Chinese in Jordan with visits to desert camps under scorching sun, donating from on his films and photo books like Yul Brynner, photographer. He produced the book Bring Forth the Children in 1971 about refugee children using money to help thousands, and lobbied U.S. Congress on refugee rights. His last film, Death Rage, in 1976, filmed in Italy with gun action, then returned to the stage with The King and I, over 4,725 performances at theaters across America, until his death with his voice still strong. Yul passed away on October 10, 1985, at age 65, from lung cancer due to smoking from his opium addiction, days in Paris. Before that, he recorded a PSA against my mind to smoking for the American Cancer Society. Now that I'm dead, just because I smoked too much, don't tempt fate. That warning still holds value today, especially for those of you who smoked during World Wars or Vietnam. Yul left behind the image of an eccentric king, but his son's biography revealed romantic secrets. With Cocteau, Hatfield, Newman, Brando, Puig, not pretty because it caused pain to his family, 5 children, 4 wives, but inspiring about courage to live true in an era of discrimination, where homosexuality was seen as illness and monitored by the FBI. From my perspective, Yul was a victim of the era, but also a hero, reminding us of the value of authenticity, how society has progressed from the 1950s to now, where bisexuality is more accepted thanks to the Stonewall movement in 1969. He was not just an actor, but a fashion icon. The bald head became a trend, influencing Michael Jordan later and stars like Vin Diesel, and his exotico style paved the way for Asian actors in Hollywood like Bruce Lee or Jackie Chan. He once turned down the James Bond role in 1962 for fear of typecasting as a king, and his friendship with Audrey Hepburn, she was godmother to son Rock, often sending Christmas gifts. In charity, he collaborated with Elizabeth Taylor against AIDS in 1985, though he died before the epidemic exploded, and supported Romani through his own fund due to his fabricated origin story. Yul's story also relates to other stars. Compared to Brando, he was less rebellious but more mysterious. With their affair as evidence of Hollywood's bisexual network with Newman, he shared charity passion, like the Newman's own foundation. His legacy is a lesson. Secrets can kill slowly, like his cancer, but living true brings freedom. Dear viewers, Yul Brynner's story ends, but the lessons last forever. Thank you for listening patiently. If you found it interesting, please like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts on old Hollywood. See you in the next video. Wishing you health and peace.